Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Welcome to First Center for Spiritual Living, and it's nice to see some folks here live and in the flesh, right? And it's always nice to see a large screen of people on YouTube. Today we're having a little get-together at the center after this lesson. So if you happen to be in the New York area, come on over. I have a reading that I wanted to read. It was in the newsletter this week, and if any of you are not on the broadcast list, well, you must all be, right? You could send Jimmy your email address and contact information, and we can add you. That way you can keep up with everything that goes on here. We usually have a few things like this in the e-letter every week. This was entitled, and I'm reading it because we've already got some really nice comments about it. So it's entitled, Be You, Beautiful. The most beautiful thing you can be is yourself. If the world ever lacks beauty, it has failed to find you. You don't need a mirror to see your beauty. Your reflection is painted all over the cosmos. Beauty is not how you look. Beauty is in your soul. It is an expression of your spiritual, authentic self. Be beautiful, and you will live beautifully. You are so much more beautiful when you believe in yourself. Beauty is what you are. It does not solely lie in your physical or outer appearance. Truly, you are a sight to see and behold. The beauty that surrounds you is generated from within your soul. The flower grows not for its own vanity, but to express the beauty that nature has given it. Be like the flower, expressive, not possessive. While others' opinions may have some validity, don't depend on how they see you to validate yourself. The most beautiful thing you can be is yourself. Nothing makes you more beautiful than having the confidence and the courage to be and express your spiritual self. To be you is to be beautiful. And so it is. I don't know who wrote that. We borrowed it from someone, so if I hear, I'll let you know who it is. So again, people are still coming in, so welcome to the center. Welcome to all the people on Zoom call, and then the Zoom call, and then there will be people on the other platforms throughout the week, upwards of, I don't know, a couple hundred people, so we want to welcome them too. If you're watching this on YouTube through the week, send us your contact information. We can include you. Usually after everything we do, every gathering, we have a time for personal sharing. Thursdays, we're getting 50 some odd people on our calls, and it's fun to lead the discussion. It's really quite good to listen to everybody else. That's what that class and that group was always intended to be. So please tune in on Thursdays, or as you are now, Sunday mornings. Our teaching is a transformational teaching. Each day is filled with endless possibilities. You're caused your own experience, right? And you are what is called the determining factor. I think I first heard that expression from Raymond Charles Barker. And if you're the determining factor, then you have the power. So the title of, I had to come up with a title. Today it's going to be Direct Knowing. The spiritual freedom of direct knowing. Some of you might have heard of Carl Jung. If you're adults and you've read a little bit, right, in your studies. I know I ran into him different times, different courses. He was a famed psychiatrist. His work has been influential in the fields of psychiatry, anthropology, archaeology, literature, philosophy, and religious studies. Jung had Lutheran parents, right? His father was a Lutheran minister also. And then I had to look up what do Lutherans believe in, because I couldn't remember. Lutherans believe that human beings are saved from their sins by God's grace through their faith on the basis of the Scripture. So that would be somewhat similar to what I was raised in the Catholic faith. Orthodox Lutheran theology holds that God made the world perfect, humanity perfect, holy, and sinless. And in that belief system, like any of the, I'll call them Abrahamic religions, be like Islam, Christianity, Judaism, any of these, and in this belief system, there is the possibility of, heaven and hell, and so that's that duality. When Carl Jung commented that his father's Lutheran Bible stood as a great wall between his dad having the experience of a living source, I thought about that. What we teach here is direct access, right? Direct access to this inner source, this presence. So Jung was commenting on his dad, who he thought was brilliant and great, but he thought the Lutheran Bible, and that would be any of these Orthodox faiths, stand as a great wall between, in that case, his father having this experience of this living source. So when I was putting this lesson together over the weekend, I thought, well, this could be true for any of us coming out of different faiths, because there's different scriptures, different faiths, and I don't need to name the faiths. All of them come with some type of orthodoxy. So I would presume that if you're going along with Carl Jung's idea that we all have walls, we all have some kind of barriers that get in the way of us living in joy and expressing this connection with Source. And they stem from these old ideas and belief systems. Today our focus is looking up, thinking about the dogma that we may have inherited or accepted. I certainly accepted a lot when I was young, like 6, 7, and 8, because I went to parochial school and we went to Mass every day even. And so I had a firm set of ideas of what were sins and what were not, and the need for confession and the need, many things. And so there were a lot of scriptures in my life that I wasn't even aware of when I was a child. So whatever book stands in the way of us having an authentic experience, we want to think about that. I don't like to call spirituality baggage, but whatever came in that's preventing you from having this wonderful experience, hour by hour, day by day in your life. Carl Jung was struggling with his father's scriptures. So if you have any of that going on, it could prevent you from having this authentic and direct experience. What Jung was getting at in his writing that I was reviewing is, he said, organized, dogmatic, authoritarian religious groups have really one primary objective, which is to grow and to promote and maintain their institution and their creed. And in that way, Carl Jung sounded a little bit like Ernest Holmes. Ernest Holmes was our founder. Ernest Holmes claimed that our individual spiritual growth and maturation becomes impossible with any of these artificial systems. So if you've got all this artificial stuff coming out of orthodox beliefs, Ernest Holmes is saying it's really tough for us to mature and grow because you've got all this stuff, and you can think of what it might be for you. I certainly remember a lot of what I was presented with as a kid. I did some research for you this weekend. The presentation I was going to make, for one reason or another, didn't get to me, so I was digging, and I found commentary that Ernest Holmes wrote on the subject of organized churches before he actually let the organization go in that direction. Ernest Holmes was conflicted about the whole subject of churches. I'm sure some of you have known that, read that. He wanted to preserve the teaching. He wrote this book, which was a compilation of all these great things, but he was hesitant about the whole subject of churches. Before he agreed to let his writings be used for these groups that were forming around him, he did not like the idea of churches. I'll say that right up. He envisioned something else, but I don't think he was 100% clear on what that was. Maybe an institute or a study I look over at our original charter on the wall, and I think it refers to it as an institute. So Holmes wasn't 100% clear himself, and there were groups forming around him at the time. But in any event, the point here is Ernest wasn't in favor of them. They unfolded because people around him wanted to preserve the work, the study that he put together. There was concern that his work would end with him. So people started teaching it. And from the beginning, there were two distinct groups that were organized. Note that word, organized. And then there were independent groups. He had less problem with the independent groups than he did wherever there was going to be structure. Reginald Armour wrote in a book, That Was Ernest. He said, Ernest was personally clear about all of this. He wanted to accept no limitation on his own spontaneous individuality and experience. So if he were here today, he would be saying that to all of us. Accept no limitation on your own spontaneous individuality and experience. And he didn't really like structure and limitation in any way imposed upon people approaching the teaching. For Ernest, the word church spelled organization and limitation, and so he would have none of it. His brothers both were ministers, who he observed could not make decisions on their own without consulting with authorities and boards of directors, or they had to color in the lines of whichever groups that they were, I'll say, teaching from rather than preaching from. And they had to work with doctrines that were filled with what Ernest called error and opinions. Ernest Holmes felt in his attempt to synthesize the wisdom of the ages in the textbook that he had something better. He thought he compiled something much better than all of these orthodox belief systems. And he said better only because he thought everybody could go directly within themselves to access this source within. So you got it. You have the power. It's within you. And that's what he was really saying. In other words, you don't need to access this source through churches. You don't need to access this indwelling spirit. You don't have to go anywhere. You know, it's in you as you, operating through you. So we like coming in here Sundays, and we like gathering on Zoom with like-minded people. I like it. I think most of you like it. We like communing with people who have a similar understanding, and we like being reminded of the spirit and the power that is within each and all of us. Ernest Holmes thought, and he stated, that we did not need these old creeds. We didn't need any of them. We did not need the temples or the buildings or any of the intermediaries to do anything for us. So intermediaries would be priests and, I suppose, practitioners and saints, and anything. You have access to it, is what he's getting at here, right? So the essential message is that we all have direct access. There is internal guidance, indwelling presence and power within you, operating through you. Ernest would accept no limitation on his own spontaneous individuality. And to him, the word church, any church, was problematic because it spelled organization, in his mind, limitation. He didn't like it, and he would have none of it. He regarded the source, or the indwelling energy, as the important thing. The understanding that it's there and it's operating for good and you can use it. He did not place the ministry on a pedestal just because there's a pulpit and there's... He didn't, he would think the person next to him was just as holy as the minister, which is true. As I've mentioned, if it were totally up to our founder, Ernest Holmes, it's doubtful that there would be any organized church. Of course, he loved the teaching and the work that he put together. And how it came together, rather, wasn't quite as important to him. He had a sense, like Carl Jung, that the institutions themselves stand as great barriers. Yes, the institutions stand as barriers to the basic cosmic law of continual creative change. So some of us are still trying to do spiritual groups like were done 20 years ago, or even 10 years ago, and it's changing rapidly. The affiliated New Thought group calls themselves a church with no walls. So we really, as we move forward, need to understand that our teaching is going forth into the world in ever new ways. So as we guide our community here, we're always trying to be mindful of that. I didn't get a sense that Ernest Holmes was picking on any one institution either. I think it's true. I think he was speaking wherever there's dogma. Wherever there's a lot of dogma or creed, it's going to move you away from having an authentic experience yourself for yourself. One of the reasons many of us love New Thought and the teaching of Ernest Holmes and Louise Hay is that our philosophy is, as near as I can see, pretty free of dogma. There have been individuals and groups of people that have tried to add layers to the basic teachings of Ernest Holmes. As I mentioned, Ernest himself had a problem with churches because they formed around the teaching, causing an early split in our movement. There were people that were trying to put these free-thinking ministers in molds that didn't work out very well. Some of the groups went independent, like Fred Bales, and Ernest didn't care really one way or another if a person was utilizing the teaching in an independent chapter. That didn't matter to him. He was just concerned that you're practicing the teaching. He liked the independent groups because his desire was for us to get the idea and start practicing it and get our teaching out into the world. None of us know how religious science is going to unfold in the future. I had an interesting conversation with a minister this weekend, and we wonder, are we going to be centers and like this another 20 years from now? It's tough to say, but we know the teaching goes forward in some form or another. Ernest Holmes didn't have a notion of competition when it came to religious science. Our teaching to him was an idea whose time had come, and the people tried to put it into old skins or in church settings, and he was more concerned about us practicing this principle that we teach. So his vision wasn't all about churches, it was far bigger. And back to Carl Jung for a moment, where Carl Jung is talking about orthodox beliefs, buildings, and dogma. Carl Jung thought that the bigger the institution, the more stagnation is found, the more removed it is from having this alive experience. And what we're always going for in New Thought is bringing ourselves to having authentic experience. When we do spiritual mind treatment, the first step is recognition. So generally we meditate, we quiet ourselves at least in a moment, and we recognize that we are one with the one, and we allow something to stir within ourselves where we sense it because we have something inside of us. We recognize and we know that there is this power and it's available, and we connect with it, and we know that power is in me, operating through me now. And as you're able to do that, you're able to connect with the divine, the mystery, and then you're able to work with it. You can align yourself with the ideas of peace, power, love, joy, and beauty, and then you can proclaim and you can affirm a truth. I am beautiful, or I'm whole, I'm complete, I'm healthy, and these are all ideas of truth. And you can accept them into your being, and you can give thanks for the awareness that you're having. You can release these perfect ideas, and they will begin to bear fruit to the extent that you believe in them. So what Holmes was after was for us to practice. And Jung predicted during his lifetime that most of the religions that we all know of, and through my life and yours, won't even be around in another 20, 30 years. So both of these men are talking about having inner experiences. Most of us grew up in some kind of religion. I'd be interested in, there's probably quite a variety. And most of us absorbed from these religions as children some type of religious ideas. We've absorbed ideas of what is wrong, what is right, who is good, who is not good, what is a sin. We've absorbed ideas of guilt and shame. And all of this becomes part of our belief system. And sometimes it's very difficult to get to a place where you're thinking for yourself, to really get past your past, because we got a lot of programming within us. You'll hear me most classes, we talk a lot about phrases like, we need to trade in the lesser idea that we hold on to for the greater. So that's what we do in religious science. We're always, once we realize that we're saying things that are like not life-giving, we release it and we replace it with a better idea. We've had people in our gatherings recently who still describe how this religious stuff, or orthodoxy from whatever faith it is, causes them to stay stuck. Anybody who's been on some of our recent Thursday calls, you'll hear people talk about, I keep doing this, and it comes from things that were passed on to you. And so we have the ability here to look that stuff right in the face and release the need, for feeling shame and blame, and we can level up. We can hitch our wagons to the stars. But if we don't, we'll keep repeating old ideas and the old tapes that come from all this orthodox belief. Carl Jung, again, in describing his minister father, thought that this wall, this orthodoxy that people like his dad had, prevented them from experiencing what he called the living God. It's difficult to experience this presence, this source, when you are riddled with fear, doubt, and insecurity. So we want to think, as you go forth this week, think about the things that, might be holding you back in terms of any of that orthodox stuff that you might still be embracing. Old theology or religious thought, dogma, where we might be giving it authority over us. I believe it was Raymond Charles Barker, the founder of our center here in New York, who always said, you are the primary factor. You're the decider in your own life. Barker said, you're the whole bit. Your life is about you, okay? Yes, you. You're the cause of your own experience. So that's the good news and the good and the bad news. In other words, nobody's really doing anything to us. We might say that, and that's a mistake. It's more empowering for you to say, I'm caused in my own experience, I'm creating this, and I'm creating this person to be something, a bad guy or a good guy. Because we allow things in our life and we can, we're the author of our experience. So we have a lot of control and we have a lot of power that oftentimes we don't know that we have. So Jung passed away, I think, in the early 60s. And here we are all these years later. There still are organized churches all over the world, but most of them have closed. The world is a big place, and these old structures are dying. As I looked up, there's millions of people, though, that are still turning their lives and decisions over to these old creeds throughout the world. But most of humankind has come a long way. These orthodox faiths and institutions and theologies often pit people against people. And I don't need to name the countries because you all know what it is. Wherever it is, the consequences in this time and age can be devastating. Fortunately, for those of us who practice new thought, we're learning to be open, and we're learning to develop a personal relationship with the Spirit. It's a journey without a distance, God and you. From my Unity days, 20, 30 years ago, Reverend Cameron used to say, this Spirit in you, this God in you, the hope of your glory. It's the best kept secret throughout time, and people look and they go everywhere to learn about this connection with God, and it's always right here. You're standing on holy ground. Practicing the presence, practicing the teaching is a key, right? Because it needs to be, according to Ernest Holmes, less theory and more practice. So it might be good for us to slow down a couple times a day, to be still long enough so you can make yourself aware, to connect with the source, to be aware that Spirit is here in you, operating through you right now. Many of us have let go of the doctrines of our grandparents and parents, and many of us have, and we've also let go of the things that get in the way of us having a direct experience. And we come together every week and we let go more and more. In our affirmative prayer process, Ernest Holmes said, it's the time, it's the art, it's the method of ridding the mind of negation. And I know it's work because I do it myself. I can really easily go into what's wrong and what's missing. But the work here is to know that you're supplied and supported and take the time to do that. There's different ways that you can do it. Affirmative prayer, spiritual mind treatment is what we teach. The thing to understand is you have direct access to power. You don't have to go anywhere, again, to access it. You might remember the word oracle from Greek history, or you might not. I had to study it again a few years ago. And the great oracle, though there were other oracles, was found in the temple in Delphi to Apollo. The oracle would always answer questions given to her by visitors wishing to be guided in their future actions. It's a pretty cool story. You might look it up or Google it. People from everywhere would go there. People who were searching for answers. They looked high and low. They go everywhere. They take journeys, physical and spiritual. One of the early presidents, and I believe it was Jefferson, said, "Your own intuitive reason is the only, and I repeat, only oracle given to you by God." And that's pretty profound for somebody right in the 1700s, right? Your own intuitive reason is the only, and I repeat, only oracle given to you by God. So that was in the 1780s. And then comes Carl Jung and Ernest Holmes, and they're all saying the same thing. You have the thing in you. You are the thing, and hopefully you want to learn how to use it. Okay, I was going to be kind of like, I thought this is too bold. You have the thing, you are the thing, and hopefully you want to learn how to use the thing. And when I first heard those words, I blessed myself in a Catholic church. I thought they can't speak about God this way. But the fact is, you do have it. It's in you, operating through you, and you can learn how to use it productively and constructively. Hopefully, everybody here wants to use the power constructively and get out of the blame game and take the power back to you. So we, all of us in this room and on this call, are the next generation. You're following Holmes and Jung. Carl Jung was accurately predicting a massive movement away from archaic and fossilized dogma in all places before he passed away. Countless millions have left Protestant and Catholic churches over the past 3 decades. The vast majority of these churches are gone, they've been sold off, and Jung was speaking back then of a movement, a new movement like ours, a new kind of spirituality, a new kind of expression based on wholeness. And if it was to be a church, it would be a whole different kind of church. It probably wouldn't be called a church. It would be a place, a gathering of like-minded people, sharing their experiences, sharing their expansive ideas. So we have to be open to change right here at First Center. And every week when we get together in our growth group, we have to think, okay, maybe I need to get rid of the jacket and the tie. Maybe we've got to meet in the round. Maybe we've got to get rid of the podium, So we're open. Change is happening quickly, in case you haven't noticed. We've learned how to do this electronically. We can be face-to-face with hundreds of people, whereas we used to be face-to-face with 30. So as we get into this teaching more and more, there's a realization that we are part of the one. We are part of the universe. We are individualizations of this source. There's no need to really go to buildings to worship, right? The only reason we come to buildings is to connect with friends, because the worship is an inner process, and I don't even know if you want to call it worship. So this new spirituality, this implosion that Holmes talked about, would have no dogma, and the individual would be ever more coming to the direct realization that they have it operating in them. This new spirituality would not be about walls, buildings, structures, and the gatherings when people gathered would look much different. So from my notes from yesterday, look at us here in New York today, right? Look at our Thursday gathering. You know, we're doing self-healing, an extension of Ernest Holmes' work and Louise Hay's work. Thursday, we had 53 people interacting after the call was over. That's a lot of people, and it's growing. We have 4,600 people that have contacted us. That's amazing. So, and then for the other couple hundred that will watch us after the fact, we're thrilled that we are able to be here and to broadcast, and anybody who wants to support our work is welcome to, but we offer what we do to the public for free. We have a virtual membership that's growing, and everybody's invited to join. It's $50 a year, but you don't need to join. You do not need to join to be a part of this, because our services are free. I'm happy to see a studio audience with us. We call it now studio audience here in New York City. And who could ever think this would happen? It was taught to me 4 years ago, 5 years ago, before COVID. The future will be centers with studio audiences, and your greater congregation will be virtual. I didn't know if I believed it back 4 or 5 years ago, but I certainly believe it now. So we don't know if the buildings are necessary, but we have a building now. We certainly don't think a big sanctuary is necessary, though if we grow, we'll acquire one. We love our teaching, so it's wonderful to have people here in person today. I'm really happy to see you. I know Jimmy's ordered a bunch of food. It's also a demonstration, what we've done here, all these, you are a demonstration, each of you and all of you. All the technology we've learned how to use is certainly a miracle to me, because, boy, I had my doubts. So we're all a demonstration. It's all a demonstration, and that we could grow so quickly and evolve to serve a much, much larger audience than we ever did before, of like-minded people. We already are a part of what Carl Jung and Ernest Holmes had envisioned happening, though we knew it not. We found out how to communicate face-to-face and electronically. I mean, who could ever have thought, right? Who knew? Though, as practicing religious scientists, we shouldn't be surprised, at least in that sense. Those of us who really love this teaching, we might not like change, but we expect change. We know life is continually evolving and changing. None of us have the power to stop spiritual evolution. We can't ever go back to anything that was before, so don't even try. It was the great Emerson who said, "The dice of God are always loaded." We can't stop the creative process, but we can abandon old theology and dogma and things that hold us back, that might be a wall to us experiencing this connection with Source. Emerson gave us some amazing clues as to where to look. He said, and I'm paraphrasing him, Source is everywhere. He said, Source reappears in every moss, in every cobweb, in everything you look at. It's always present in every soul, in every deed you do. You can feel it directly within you. It is by yourself that God speaks to you. You can feel the presence within you. Reliance on this connection is true self-reliance. When you look within, you find God, and then follow that lead. Look within with pure eyes and simple trust. You have the power. You got this. If you don't know how to do affirmative prayer, we can certainly teach it to you. But you have to practice it. You have to do it right. We can give you the form. It's pretty easy. But doing it and embodying it and feeling it and connecting with it, we can give you instruction. It's not complicated. You have the power. You, as Reverend Ike would say, you can't lose with the stuff we use. So that's it for the moment. I'm going to close in a second, and I'm going to ask you how you have used the power in your life this week. the power that's in you. And then we'll see who wants to share. So give us like a minute break.